Let's turn back the clock half a decade to 2018. A 76er team led by a young Joel Embiid was headed to the Eastern Conference semifinals to face off with the league's #1 defense, anchored by one Al Horford, at the absolute peak of his powers. Horford's never really been a traditional big. Standing just 6'9", his big draw is how well he moves. He's one of NBA history's most mobile centers, switching across the board with regularity and allowing the Celtics to throw out some real aggressive coverages or defensive schemes with him manning the middle. Despite not having the size of many fives, what he did have was a super strong core that helped him hold his ground against brute forces with length and active hands that enabled him to make plays on the ball while protecting the rim at a high level. So that left him virtually the perfect matchup for a raw, post-centric scorer like 23-year-old Embiid, changing everything Joel tried to do and seemingly having an unlimited amount of answers as he shut him down for most of this series. 5 years later though, Embiid has added layers upon layers to each aspect of his game, improving his touch as both a shooter and interior finisher, sharpening up his handle and footwork to make his scoring more versatile, while becoming bigger, stronger, and smarter as a decision maker. Yet still, when he saw that matchup with Horford, again in the semifinals, it was a real difficult time for the NBA MVP. In this series, Horford spent about 48.5 minutes defending Joel, and in that time he scored just 82 points in 80 shot attempts, shot 39% from the field and 46% true shooting, while marking twice as many turnovers as assists. At the age of 36, Al's definitely lost a few steps, but remains agile enough to slide horizontally and cut off Joel's initial attack angles as a driver. His hands and length are as disruptive as ever, getting low and up into his airspace to limit the ability to use that improved handle, and away from the ball, making entry passes much more difficult by staying active and clogging up those lanes. He also does a great job of taking away Embiid's routine release angles by holding his ground and swiping down at the ball whenever he looks to gather. Joel catches the ball near the elbow with downhill momentum, but Horford's able to slide over and slow down the play. Harden cuts so that Brown is forced to clear the nail, giving Embiid the entire middle of the floor, going to an off-the-dribble midi that never even makes it to the shooting pocket. This time he's initiating from the top of the key as a slasher, and although he does get the step with a nice hesitation dribble, once he attempts to finish, Horford attacks the ball and takes it right away. Typically Joel will draw a boatload of fouls on defenders looking to swipe down, but Horford knows exactly when to pick his spots, quickly moving his arm up and away from the gather to force an awkward look without fouling. And he also shows great discipline by not biting on any of Embiid's many fakes, holding his position on 3 different jab steps, waiting for his foot to leave the ground before jumping to contest, and just smothering a face-up jumper. When he puts it all together, you'll find some masterful defensive possessions in isolation like this, staying low and moving his feet to close off any potential driving lane, and forcing Joel to turn his back to not get that handle taken away. Then using that lower body strength to remain in proper position as he gets bumped, and perfectly timing a contest on the tough fall-away jumper. Here it is again, cutting off Joel's first step, absorbing contact to remain in front, not falling for any of his fakes, and blocking a turnaround fade. As a result, he was able to pretty commonly force Embiid into exclusively jump shooting, and although he has the ability to make these shots at a pretty high clip, in comparison to what he's capable of doing in the paint and the rate at which he gets to the line, any possession where he settles is a massive win. Again, he doesn't even flinch at that first jab step, allowing him to take away the paint on a drive left, and that's just much lower percentage offense than the alternative. This time Joel sets up in the middle of the floor with all the space in the world to work with, but Horford gets right up under him so that he can only dribble to an outside angle where he's still able to contest a fall-away J. It was the same thing with Embiid on the three-point line. Although he can make those, Horford was more than willing to concede them, sliding over to the nail to tag PJ Tucker on a roll and not even bothering to close on the recovery. Tobias Harris has a size advantage in the post, so Horford rotates way over to get the ball out of his hands, and when it gets to Joel, all he's worried about is that slash off the catch, not treating the three-point shot as a massive threat. Here's what it looks like when he does put the ball on the deck. Horford waits for him in the painted area, so that instead of a drive to the basket, it's a much tougher off the dribble J. Conceding these looks helped him be a lot more disruptive as a pick and roll big. All he's worried about is not giving Harden an angle to the paint, essentially ignoring his man at the top of the key, which results in a turnover. He had to be careful about not over-helping though, because if Joel's stepping into elbow middies out of the pick and roll, those are too good of looks to consistently give up. We saw that quite a few times throughout this series. There were moments where the two-man game between he and Harden was virtually unstoppable, consistently getting to those 10 to 16 foot jumpers after receiving a pocket pass. So Boston closed out the series with a huge adjustment. Instead of having Horford as the guy to turn away drives in the pick and roll, he would get low and take away passes to the middle of the floor, while the low man slides down to pick up the ball, conceding corner threes from weaker shooters. Harden's looking to get to that pocket pass, but Horford stays home, while Robert Williams completely commits to the paint, leaving only one option, which is a PJ Tucker three-pointer. When needed, Horford did do more as the big though, seamlessly switching on to Harris and sticking with him every step of the way to really bother a finish attempt. Again, he's not quite as mobile as he once was, but is better than your average big as a switch defender, and he had some pretty good displays of that in the last few games, matching up with guys like James Harden or other wings, and offering some legitimate resistance. So, while his primary focus was limiting Joel Embiid as much as possible, his jack-of-all-trades style of defense allowed him to do so much more, even in his older age. Philly had the number 2 offense this season, scoring 118.7 points every 100 possessions, somewhat replicated that in round 1 with 116.6, but against Boston just a measly 109.5. And a lot of that has to do with Al Horford, who, after all of these years, continues to look like the ultimate Joel Embiid stopper. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you thought of this series and what your predictions are for the conference finals. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.